Good morning, everyone. I'm Keishla Adderley, and welcome to Today in Parliament. Well, it was not the bills which made headlines in Parliament last week, but a debate over the rules which ultimately led to Engliston MP Glenys Hanna Martin being named last week, Wednesday. It was a carryover from the debate of 2 weeks ago, at which time Hanna Martin alleged that the firings of 2 civil aviation employees was politically motivated. Now, on today's agenda, 2 very important bills which are an extension of reforms in the financial services industry. They are the Transactions Reporting Bill that is set to be debated when parliamentarians go back to the House of Assembly and start today's session at 10 o'clock. That the Proceeds of Crime Bill also on the agenda for today. Now back to a review of last week, at which time Engliston MP Glenys Hanna Martin said she wanted to clarify some remarks attributed to her by the Speaker of the House. Let's listen in.
The Honourable Member for Engliston has indicated to the Chair that she wishes to raise an issue. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Engliston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, you may recall, the House may recall, and you may recall, Mr. Speaker, that last week I made certain assertions in the Parliament which were ultimately struck from the record. Excuse me. And in the course of that, I think there was some exchange between the Chair and myself about what transpired. And I was very concerned about that, Mr. Speaker, because one of the things that was, I think, the impression given was that I made statements to the effect, and I was able to get the Hansard, that it doesn't matter, or I don't care what the Chair rules. You could do whatever you want to do. And then you indicate you can pull the Hansard record, Mr. Speaker. And I got the record, Mr. Speaker, on the issue when the matter was challenged by the member for Elizabeth. And what I, in fact, said, Mr. Speaker, is I am not with, I said, the member for Elizabeth accuses me of grandstanding. I have a track record. I don't grandstand. I don't make assertions of this nature. I don't think I've ever done it. I am not withdrawing, Mr. Speaker. You can be free to do whatever you want, but they know why these women were terminated. It is based on their politics in those communities, and they know why they were terminated, Mr. Speaker. I will not withdraw because I know this is the reason they were terminated, Mr. Speaker. And I wanted the record to reflect that I never used language to the effect that I don't care what the Chair does, etc., because it gives an impression, Mr. Speaker, about me that is not correct. What I was communicating was that I was holding firm to the position, Mr. Speaker, and the Chair has the authority to strike, which the Chair did in fact do. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, is the one, I think the Chair indicated that I was not speaking to a specific minister in the Parliament, and I looked at the Hansard again in the second sentence of my intervention. I spoke about the 2 women, young women, who were terminated by the Airport Authority, and I said the minister is here, which is the Minister for the Airport Authority. I was speaking specifically to the minister, Mr. Speaker, and not at large, as was, I think, you indicated during those proceedings. And in fact, the other point, the third point, so the third point is the one, I think the Chair ruled that whenever a minister, any minister, refutes something, if I could find the wording of it, whenever a minister, any minister refutes, let me get the exact language, Mr. Speaker. Sorry.
While you're getting the exact language
Yes.
on that particular point, also give the House the exact language that the Speaker used
I will, Mr. Speaker.
with respect to
Sorry.
the statement that you made.
Okay, yes, Mr. Speaker. The exact language used by the Speaker said that the statement that I made. Sorry. Okay. Now, this is on page 2 of the transcript, Mr. Speaker. Now, we had a circumstance early this morning where, in my estimation, members were being disrespectful to the Chair. First of all, whenever the Chair is speaking, all members should be quiet. The Chair should be heard in silence, and no statement from any member should ever come or be directed to the Chair that, quote, doesn't matter, or I don't care what the Chair rules. You could do whatever you want to do. I can pull the Hansard records, Speaker. That is the quote from the chair, Mr. Speaker.
Well, the Speaker, of course, responded to that, putting forth a view that Hanna Martin did show disrespect to the chair.
I took the opportunity to order the records of the proceeding from ZNS to make certain that what was said, whether it was recorded in the Hansard record or not, is according to the rules of this Parliament, and with respect to broadcasting, is indeed Rule 89, which states that the recordings are the dignified, accurate, and consistent image of the House. And so, when I examine these tapes on numerous occasions, the chair had reason to direct comments to the member for Angliston, who consistently breached the rules with respect to listening to the chair in silence. No request was ever made for the member by the chair to withdraw the remarks. The member for Elizabeth intervened and pointed out to the chair that there was a specific remark with respect to the political motivation that led to the termination of the two individuals indicated by you. And the chair's response was that the member or minister was in his right to bring to the attention of the chair any statement or language that he felt was an abuse of the process. Now, if we examine Erskine May on page 396, most certainly, honorable member, have your seat. No, I'm not going to let you speak afterwards. What I'm doing is clarifying this matter. Honorable member, my tolerance is running out with you. Now, have your seat. Have your seat. You entered my chambers this morning and you made inquiries of me, and I gave you what I was about to read now, and I allowed you to read it for yourself. You didn't ask for a copy at that time. Have your seat. Have your seat. Now, on page 96, rights of members to direct attention of the chair to supposed breaches of order. Erskine May says this: it is the duty of the Speaker to intervene and preserve order, though he may refrain from intervening if he thinks it unnecessary to do so. If he does not intervene, however, whether for the above reason or because he has not perceived that a breach of order has been committed, it is the right of any member who thinks that such a breach has been committed to rise to his place, interrupting any member who may be speaking, and direct the attention of the chair to the matter. And that is simply the position that the chair was indicating. The chair may have said that the minister has a right, but that right is a broad right to every single member. Every member in this parliament has the right to bring to the attention of the chair any statement or language that he feels is in breach of the rules. And so I honored the member for Elizabeth who brought that matter to the attention of the chair. It didn't matter whether that member is a minister or not. The rules are clear. Any member has that right.
Well, it was quite a lengthy back and forth after that. Opposition leader Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador MP Philip Brave Davis also engaged the speaker, defending Hanna Martin.
What you have said, Mr. Speaker, what you said is that you have examined a pattern of behavior on the part of the member for Engliston.
Yes.
That as a result of that, your discoveries suggest that every time she rose on a point of order, not to what some member may have said, it was not correct. Is that not what you said?
Honorable member, I said that I've examined these records.
Right.
And the records that I have examined show a pattern.
Yes. And that pattern.
And that pattern
Yes.
is that assertions and allegations are made.
Yes.
And the Hansard record have shown that on those occasions, the allegation and assertions were not founded. They were unfounded.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. And what I'm suggesting is, what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, right? What you have done, Mr. Speaker, what you have done is you have on your own motion conducted an inquiry relating to this member without giving the member an opportunity to be a part of that inquiry, and then making a finding that is adverse to her in the context that you have found that she has made assertions and allegations that you determine are unfounded without even giving her the opportunity. How could that be fair?
Well, Hanna Martin persisted in trying to defend her position, and the speaker insisted that she take her seat. That's when things reached a head.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Engliston.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I am beyond dumbfounded what I've just heard, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, what are you on a point of order?
I'm on Mr. Speaker, I am on a point of privilege, really, because the Speaker has just indicated that he's a scientist.
State your point of privilege.
My point of privilege, Speaker, is that you have the Speaker. I don't even know this. I'm dumbfounded, Speaker. The Speaker has accused me of coming to this Parliament with regularity, making assertions about other members, that the Speaker has now engaged on an investigative trek and has formed a conclusion that I, on each occasion, have misrepresented what that member has said in this Parliament, and that you see a pattern. I think you use the language, a pattern, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I am completely taken aback, and I am asking, Mr. Speaker, I feel, Mr. Speaker, it is quite abusive, that what you have just described, because it is something. I was in your chambers. I shared with you openly what I intended to raise. You sat there, I'm Speaker, no doubt listening. You came in, you talked about tapes which were not disclosed to me in that meeting, Mr. Speaker, and I didn't think I'd have to disclose the meeting. You did not disclose these tapes that I guess you were just sitting there waiting for me to come in this Parliament, and I would use the language, ambush me. I've not heard the tapes. No, that's what it is. I've not heard the tapes. I don't know what these tapes say. And as Mr. Speaker, and finally, Mr. Speaker, you have indicated, I'm quite shocked, Mr. Speaker, that you have singled out this member who represents the good people of Engliston. You have singled out this member in a way in which you have gone to look at the Hansard in terms of every time this member requested. I'm sure I'm not the only member in this Parliament who's requested the Hansard, but you have gone on a specific, language is used. You have targeted me, Mr. Speaker. You have targeted me by going into the record of the Hansard.
Honorable member.
You have targeted
Honorable member.
You have targeted me, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, resume your seat. Honorable member, have your seat. The member for Angleton, Glennis Hanna Martin, is named by this chair. And all sympathizers who want to support can behave accordingly. A decision. Yeah. A decision on the period of suspension of the member for Angleton will be determined, and this Parliament will be informed. Sergeant at Arms, you are hereby notified that the member for Angleton is hereby suspended from this Parliament, and that the member is not entitled to enter the precincts of this Parliament until otherwise determined by this House and the chair.
Well, that is where things were left last week, and this morning a protest is expected outside of Parliament regarding last week's conflict. The opposition leader announced that protest yesterday, and during that press conference, Mr. Davis said the opposition will boycott the proceedings of the House of Assembly, both the upper and lower chambers, until Hanna Martin is allowed back into the House. Now, the Speaker has not said formally how long Hanna Martin's suspension will last. Now, there was actual debate during the session last week as well. The credit reporting bill on the table and several other communications, including one from Prime Minister the Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis on his recent visit to Texas. He explained what he observed there and what the gains may be for the Bahamas.
The Bahamas enjoys a good reputation among the potential investors and friends of the Bahamas that we met. Mr. Speaker, on the 22nd of January 2018, I met with the Honorable Gregory Abbott, Governor of Texas, at the Governor's Mansion in Austin, the state's capital. We discussed and shared views on a number of topics, including technology, education, alternative energy, investments, economic development, and health care. We have agreed to further discussions on these and other matters. Governor Abbott is no stranger to the Bahamas. Having visited some years ago, I extended an invitation to him for a return visit to the Bahamas. Speaker, my delegation also had a constructive meeting with the Austin Technology Council, Texas Association of Business Partner Companies, on the 22nd of January 2018. In my presentation, I highlighted benefits of investing in the Bahamas, particularly Grand Bahama. Members would recall that Grand Bahama held its first technology conference last year. A number of representatives from major companies overseas attended. Our meeting with this group built upon that initiative. And during our visit to Texas, we also met with Dell, a leading American computer technology company. We engaged in wide-ranging discussions with these executives. We were given a tour of their Customer Solution Center. I was pleased with the keen interest shown in the Bahamas, and we will follow up on those discussions.
Well, during that visit to Texas, the Prime Minister also met with several sports figures and members of the Bahamian diaspora in Texas.
Mr. Speaker, in Houston, we met with some of the Bahamian community at a reception attended by approximately 300 guests. In my address at the reception, I I reported on developments in the Bahamas undertaken by my government. I invited the guests, including members of the diaspora, to participate in the development of our Bahamas. My address is attached to this communication, Mr. Speaker. So this communication I will have both addresses attached. Yes. The address at the diaspora and the address at the Texas business community. And at the end, Mr. Speaker, I will also table the cost of travel expenses. I was truly inspired by their enthusiasm and commitment to our beloved country. Our diaspora is a source of great energy and possibility for the Bahamas. During my visit, I enjoyed the privilege of meeting Pastor Joel Osteen of Lakewood Church. Pastor Osteen had been a source of inspiration to many Bahamians over the years, and an invitation was extended to him. I must point out, Mr. Speaker, that Pastor Osteen had expressed a keen interest in visiting the Bahamas, and I've mentioned to him that our stadium that can hold as much as 15,000 would be able to accommodate him and those thousands that follow him. And I would hand this information over to Ministry of Tourism so that they can follow up. However, we've already sent a communication to the various individuals that we've met, thanking them for our invitation. And Mr. Speaker, it's my intention to continue these structured and strategic overseas visits, the cost of which will be made public. I have already foreshadowed investment promotion missions overseas to various countries and regions. We will especially welcome the private sector as partners in these missions.
Well, the credit reporting bill also on the agenda last week. East Grand Bahama MP Peter Turnquest introduced the bill, touting it as one that will benefit consumers and financial institutions.
Reporting systems. As you will see as I go through the provisions of the bill, care has been taken to ensure that the rights of consumers will be protected through appropriate oversight and an appeals process, which is key to ensuring the integrity of the system. Mr. Speaker, as background to the bill, the Bahamas Credit Bureau project was launched by the Central Bank of the Bahamas in 2010 for the purposes of establishing a national credit reporting system in the Bahamas, inclusive of a credit bureau. This followed on extensive dialogue with the government, the commercial banks, and other private sector stakeholders, the World Bank, and the International Financial Corporation, with assistance from the Caribbean Regional Technical Assistance Center, better known as CARTAC. It's an IMF agency, which carried out an assessment in February 2010 to determine whether or not the Bahamas' existing regime could fully support a functioning credit reporting system. The IFC analysis identified weaknesses in the existing business and regulatory infrastructure for credit reporting in the jurisdiction and set out strategies for strengthening the regulatory and business underpinnings required to support a credit bureau, inclusive of the introduction of credit reporting legislation, as we're doing today. The IFC, in consultation with the central bank, produced a draft credit reporting bill and the accompanying regulations, which have been reviewed by a legal working group established to review the proposed legislative framework for the credit reporting system. The legal working group comprised of representatives from institutions that provide credit, such as banks and credit unions, insurance companies, money lenders, and utilities. The bills and regulations were also reviewed by the Data Protection Commissioner and the Attorney General's Office prior to being issued for public consultation in September 2014. Since then, the bill and regulations have been further revised based on internal reviews by the central bank and is now finally being presented for debate and acceptance in this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, credit bureaus collect information from lenders and other sources on a borrower's credit and bill-paying history, validates the information, and then provides the information to participating lenders by way of a credit report. Creditors then utilize these reports to determine whether or not to grant loans or extend credit, and at what interest rate.
That was East Grand Bahama MP Peter Turnquest during last week's debate. You're now looking at a live shot from the House of Assembly. On the agenda today, the Proceeds of Crime Bill and the Financial Transaction Reporting Bill, which are a continuation of a series of reforms, legislative reforms in the financial services sector. Also, some activity expected outside the House of Assembly today as everyone awaits a decision from the Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Honorable Halson Moultrie, on the suspension of Angliston MP Glenys Hanna Martin. She was, of course, named last week. The Speaker did not give a determination on how long that suspension will last, only to tell the officials who have oversight of the security of the House of Assembly that she was not allowed to re-enter the chamber of the House of Assembly until he had given further instructions. We'll get back to the House of Assembly in just a few minutes. Now, continuing with our review of last week's session, the Member of Parliament for Elizabeth, Dr. Dwayne Sands, also contributing to the credit reporting bill. He expressed the view that things in the country, economically speaking and on the financial front, were dire.
Now, Mr. Speaker, when we look at the state of affairs in the Bahamas, you will realize that things are bad. The economics, the fundamentals of our economy are not strong. And specifically, they get better during certain periods, and they get worse during certain periods. I put it to you, Mr. Speaker, that the statement made on March 31st, 2017 was made at the end of one of the worst periods of economic guidance in the history of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Now, I can tie all this together, Mr. Speaker, because you see, in 2009, I was appointed as a director of the Central Bank of the Bahamas. And having been appointed as a director of the Central Bank of the Bahamas, one of the initiatives that we started in 2009 was the creation of a credit bureau. As a matter of fact, in 2010, the then governor of the Central Bank, Ms. Wendy Craig, foreshadowed the introduction of a credit bureau in 18 to 24 months. Unfortunately, another administration came into being, and they shelved the plans for the introduction of a credit bureau. You may recall, Mr. Speaker, that we were having serious challenges with credit, and that the world economy had been turned upside down. To get an idea of how bad it was, Mr. Speaker, in 2012, 16.1% of all Bahamian loans were non-performing. To give you an idea of the context, that is 3 times worse than the level of non-performing loans in Greece when they went bankrupt. 3 times worse than Greece when they were bailed out by the IMF and the European Union. The arrears in the Bahamas for mortgages had grown from 8.8% in 2005 to 22% at its highest rate in 2012. Mr. Speaker, 90% of Bahamians do not have $5,000 in their bank account. Of the civil service salary that is paid on a monthly basis, between 70 and 80% of civil service salaries do not go home with the civil servant. They go to banks, they go to furniture companies, they go to insurance companies for credit. Mr. Speaker, when we add to that unfunded pension liabilities, which was as high as $2.2 billion in 2016, and anticipated to grow to $3.7 billion by 2030, we realize that things are not good. And so when the last administration saw these challenges, what did they do? They did not seek to address the fundamentals, Mr. Speaker. What they sought to do was to promise the people something that they could not deliver. They called it mortgage relief. And what they suggested was that despite the fact that people were drowning in debt, that what they would do was take public funds and bail out these persons without addressing the fundamental issues. We know what happened with that failed and flawed plan, Mr. Speaker. It did not work. It did not help. And so when we look at what has happened, there has been no substantive or significant improvement.
That was Elizabeth MP, Dr. Dwayne Sands, on the credit reporting bill last week in Parliament. That bill will, among other things, establish a credit bureau, which the government is touting as an opportunity to protect consumers as well as financial institutions. It will establish, among other things, a credit reporting bureau. You're looking at a live shot now from the House of Assembly, where on the agenda today, the Proceeds of Crime Bill and the Financial Transaction Reporting Bill. Now, this is another of those financial bills the government has introduced in Parliament as they seek to clean up and reform the financial services industry in the Bahamas and protect it really from the blows that it has suffered at the hands of the international community over the last several years. The session expected to get underway momentarily. Of course, absent from the Parliament today is Angliston MP Glenys Hanna Martin. She was named or suspended last week after an altercation with the Speaker of the House of Assembly, Halson Moultrie. Mr. Moultrie has not said how long that suspension will last, and we've gotten the indication from the opposition that they will boycott the proceedings of the House until Hanna Martin is named. As we can see, though, three members of the opposition, the Honorable Picewell Forbes, Mr. Chester Cooper of Exuma, as well as Philip Brave Davis, are seated in the chamber of the House of Assembly at this hour. So it remains to be seen how that will play out and under what terms they will boycott the proceedings of the House of Assembly. But right now we're going to continue our review. We will take you back to last week's session and what transpired before Hanna Martin was eventually named.
The Honourable Member for Angliston has indicated to the Chair that she wishes to raise an issue. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Angliston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, you may recall, the House may recall, and you may recall, Mr. Speaker, that last week I made certain assertions in the Parliament which were ultimately struck from the record. Excuse me. And in the course of that, I think there was some exchange between the Chair and myself about what transpired, and I was very concerned about that, Mr. Speaker, because one of the things that was, I think, the impression given was that
That was Glenys Hanna Martin during last week's session. As we can see now, the proceedings are just about to begin in the House of Assembly. We take you live to the proceedings of the House of Assembly.
Members, the chaplain is out of the jurisdiction attending conference in Washington, D.C. So at this time, I call on the Honorable Member for Mike Isle to lead us in prayer.
A prayer for peace. Teach us your way, O Lord, that we may walk in your truth. And you have taught us to pray. Our Father, join in.
Who art in heaven,
Hallowed be thy name.
thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever.
Amen.
Brent Simonet, Desmond Bannister, Renwood Wells, Jeffrey Lloyd, Dr. Dwayne Sands, Marvin Dames, Frankie Campbell, Dionisio Diagula, Michael Pintar, Darren Penfield, Romuald Ferreira, Lanisha Rolls, Renzo Rolls, Ellsworth Johnson, Philip Davis, Roy Miller, Pakeisha Parker Edgecombe, Iram Lewis, Carlton Boleg, James Aubrey, Travis Robinson, Adrian Gibson, Donald Saunders, Frederick McAlpine, Hank Johnson, Mark Humes, Michael Post, Miriam Reckie Emmanuel, Reese Chipman, Reuben Ramming, Ricky Mackey, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, Shawnell Ferguson, Glennis Hannah Markins, Faisal Forbes, Chester Cooper.
Honorable members, acting in accordance with the Rule 88.4, the Speaker's discretion, and Rule 88.9 of the Rule Book in my possession, on the 31st of January 2008, the member for Angleton was named and suspended. It is the view of the Chair that the member for Angleton acted in a grossly disorderly and disrespectful manner and was in breach of all 5 subsections of Rule 88.4. The Rule 88.4 states, if a member has persistently and willfully obstructed the business of the House, misconducted herself in a grossly disorderly manner, used objectionable words which she has refused to withdraw, persistently and willfully refused to conform with the rules, or persistently and willfully disregarded the authority of the Chair. He may be suspended, or named and suspended by the Speaker if any of the above offenses has been committed. If the offense has been committed by a member in the House, the Speaker shall forthwith put the question on a motion being made, no amendment, adjournment, or debate being allowed, that the member be suspended from the service of the House. I now, as I indicated on the 31st of January, the Speaker indicated at that time, named and suspended the member, and indicated at that time that the question would be put at the next sitting of this Parliament, which is today. On the instance of the 31st of January 2018, pursuant to Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, the definition of the word forthwith, meaning within reasonable time, under the circumstances, and pursuant to Rule 88.9, no question need necessarily be put. The House continued its business and adjourn. As indicated on that occasion, the member for Angleston was named and suspended, and the House would determine the period of the suspension. The chair recommends that the member for Angleston be suspended for 2 consecutive sittings of the House. In accordance with the provision of Rule 88, the question is now put to this honorable House to determine the duration of that period. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo
Mr.
Town.
Speaker, in accordance with the rules of this House, Mr. Speaker, I move the motion, Mr. Speaker, that Ms. Glennis Hanna Martin be suspended from the service of this House, and that the question on that motion be put forthwith to this honorable chambers.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the member for Angleston, Glennis Hanna Martin, be suspended from this House for 2 consecutive sittings of this chamber. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will rise. The member for Angleston stands suspended for 2 consecutive sittings of this Parliament. Honorable member, take your seat. I am at the point of communications by the Speaker. You will be given an opportunity to speak. Honorable member, as I indicated, I am at the point of communication by the Speaker. Your point, you would have an opportunity as soon as I am completed with my statement. Honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
In this honorable chamber, Mr. Speaker, and we are all considered. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the floor.
Honorable member, honorable member,
He has
honorable member for Bamboo Town. Honorable member for Bamboo Town, resume your seat. Let me continue with my presentation. And all members of this chamber who wish to address this matter are welcome to do so upon the completion of my statement. Now, as we embark on this season of love, I am reminded of First Corinthians. I'm reminded of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own. It is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. But I'm also guided by the 10 Commandments and the tough love of God. As we set down the 10 Commandments, as God set down the 10 Commandments and the principles and precepts, it is therefore time for tough love. I will begin my remarks by referring to the intervention by the retired clerk of this Parliament, when I made the statement that I do not trust anyone until they have earned my trust, several persons quickly misconstrued that remark to imply an attack on the staff of this parliament. Nothing can be further from the truth. As God would have it, within days of making that statement, the retired clerk of this parliament seemed to be having difficulty with his retirement and dealing with his retirement and staying out of the affairs of this parliament, showed his true colors and provided the needed evidence to justify my statements, and in the process vindicated the position that trust should be earned. Under the guise of concern for the staff of this institution, the retired clerk, in an apparently politically motivated broadside attack, has justified my statement that trust must be earned. You see, Mr. Retired Clerk, newness is what the doctor ordered to clean up the pus and oozing wounds brought about by contaminated and corrupt thinking in this parliament. Newness and not maintenance of the status quo is what is required for transformational healing, accountability, transparency, and the advancement of this institution. You know, interestingly, I thought that the clerk of this parliament, the retired clerk, was my friend. I remember when I was in third-party politics as leader of the Bahamian Freedom Alliance, the BFA, the retired clerk would call me all the time and provide me with material to attack the Ingram administration. His advice almost caused the former Prime Minister to sue me. At the time, I thought that he was championing the cause for good governance and democracy. But as he was only trying, it appears now that he was only trying to help the PLP as he seemed to be doing today, while also attacking and hopefully soon the soon to be confirmed clerk of the parliament. Honorable members for the leader of the opposition, the member for Rumkey, Cat Island, and San Salvador, the member for South and Central Andres, and the member for Exuma and Ragged Island. Have your seat. Pursuant to Rule 8, pursuant to Rule 88.3, the Speaker now orders that the 3 members withdraw from this Parliament and are not eligible to enter this Parliament again for the next 2 sittings. And let the record reflect that under Rule 88.3, there is no requirement that any question be put or that any motion be given or be taken. Now, as I had the opportunity of working with the apparently troubled retired clerk from the time of coming to office from May 24th through the 31st of August 2017. All I can say at this time is thank God for attrition. Imagine trusting, working, and relying on the advice of someone who has now publicly expressed his innermost feelings and the kind of political venom directed at the Speaker in a letter to the editor. Thank you very much, Mr. Retired Clerk. May your soul rest in peace. But before I leave this matter, let me say that I have reviewed video recordings of the House of Assembly on the occasion when Dr. Hubert Minnis was named and suspended. No doubt, based on the elucidated advice of the retired clerk for refusing to withdraw remarks. The retired clerk is making a fuss in the media about the action of the Speaker and not the behavior of the suspended member for Angleston. In contrast, his silence was deafening with respect to the naming and suspension of the Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Hubert Minnis, as he then was. My actions in this instance was within the rules, and the record would reflect that it was not unprecedented in that Dr. Minnis was named and suspended. No vote, no question was put, and no motion was put until 2 weeks later. Now, interestingly, when questioned by the media on which rule was relied on for the suspension of the member for Angleston, and I indicated that the Speaker was authorized by Rule 88.3 to order the withdrawal of a member, as I just did, and by Rule 88.4 for naming and suspending a member, upon review, it was pointed out to me that the rule book in my possession appeared to be different from the rule book in the possession of the media personnel. That discovery aroused my curiosity and refreshed my memory of the very early period of my tenure as Speaker, when I was quoting from the rule of procedure in Parliament handed to me by the retired clerk. And the member for Cat Island at that time made inquiries of the chair because he was unable to locate the rule in the book that he had. Yesterday, I discovered 3 versions of the 2005 Rules of Procedure of the Honorable House of Assembly. And I hold these 3 rule books. These are the 3 rule books that I discovered yesterday. Mr. Cameraman, zoom in on this. The books have different numbering for the rules, and some books have more numbered rules than others. Time did not permit discovery of whether there were substantive material changes in the books and whether the Rules Committee had met since 2005 and thereby authorized such changes that appear in these rule books. So I just need to know, and I hereby table the 3 rule books that I discovered to have such grave, in my estimation, differences. None of those books appear to be signed. Can I have a look at them again? Let me just say for the record. It lists the members of the Rules Committee. It indicates that it is dated 2005. All books seem to just simply list the members of the Rules Committee. and indicate that the books were signed in 2005. None of them are signed. I just need to know, as Speaker, how in the retired clerk's perfect world of flawless administration and offering accurate, correct, and apolitical advice to my predecessors did the Parliament end up with multiple distinctly different printed and published versions of the rules of procedure. So as not to be accused of ambushing anyone with the truth. These suspicious circumstances resulting from simple observational analysis has prompted the Speaker to order an inquiry into the meetings of the Rules Committee, the instructions given for reprinting of the rules, and the source of the authority for the apparent and actual manifested differences in the published versions of the rules. This inquiry will cover the period 2003 to 2017. Perhaps a retired clerk of this Parliament should be more concerned with bringing clarity to this matter, as opposed to seemingly being absorbed with the hope that this institution fail in his absence. I just want to take you quickly through the chronology of the events leading up to the suspension of the member for Angleston. And I also intend to table these documents. On the 8th of June, now this Speaker came to this seat on the 24th of May, 2017. By the 8th of June, the handed transcript shows the member for Angleston attempting to speak twice on a matter during the debate. The objection was taken by the member for Carmichael. The member disrespecting the chair by interrupting the Speaker, or disrespected the chair by interrupting the Speaker on several occasions. On the 13th of June, the Tribune reported Ms. Virgil, the reporter, indicated that Davis and Hanna Martin questioned the Speaker ruling on sending the matter to the Committee for Privilege. Now, I must remind you at this stage that if there is a grievance with any decision or rule or order by the Speaker, the procedure is by way of motion to question any decision of the Speaker, not by way of debating the Speaker from your position and interrupting the Speaker contrary to the rules, which states that the Speaker must be heard in silence. On the 15th of June, the hands of the records again indicate that the member for Angleston on more than 9 occasions attempted or requested and demanded that the member for Fort Charlotte provide evidence or withdraw unsubstantiated claims. The member for Fort Charlotte did the honorable thing and withdrew the claim. On the 19th of June, again, the member for Angleston makes incorrect allegations on remarks by the member for Central Grand Bahama. On the 20th of June. The member for Angleston, again, made incorrect allegations by asserting that the member for Marco City said something that the hands of the record proved the member did not say. On the 27th of September 2017, the Nassau Guardian, in a report by Travis Cartwright Carroll, headline, "The Speaker threatens to suspend Hanna Martin." That was the headline. All of these documents will be tabled. January 24th, 2018, seems like the only time the chair was under attack was during the summer break. January 24, 2018, the member for Angleston interrupted the chair on several occasions. I will lodge and table all of the records and provide the press also with these documents, and having done so, allow you to be the judge. On the 24th of January, I have recorded here that the member for Angleston said, "Whether you rule or not, I will not withdraw." That is what I meant. On the 31st of January, the member indicated to the Speaker, "I am not withdrawing, Mr. Speaker. You can be free to do whatever you want." I now wish to table the documents, the package, with the videotapes. These are the videos. Yeah, no, they're different. I wish now to table the documents that I just made reference to, and the other one. And the DVD video recordings of the proceedings of Parliament on the 24th of January 2018, and it's difficult to read, on the 31st of January 2018. Now, I wish just to bring to the attention of this chamber, the gallery, and the general public, that the Bahamian people, excluding the Speaker, gave the governing party a 34-4 majority in this Parliament. That works out to approximately 8 to 1. For every 8 Free National Movement member, there is 1 PLP member. The chair is of the view that if the rules are strictly and narrowly enforced, the public will likely not hear from the official opposition for weeks. So in the interest of democracy, the Speaker has exercised his discretion in a way so as to permit the opposition to be heard even when points of order and privilege are not well taken, as earlier this morning. Obviously, the Speaker's generosity has not been well received or appreciated. The member for Angleston, who seemed to think that she is entitled, has taken to the social media accusing the Speaker of trying to silence her, when the undisputable, irrefutable, incontrovertible evidence reveals that she has been the most vociferous member and has been permitted by the chair to speak even when points of order are not well taken, and she has been the greatest beneficiary of the chair's generosity in exercising its discretion for the extension of time allotted for debates. The member for Angleston has been the beneficiary of a 10-minute extension, while no other member in this Parliament has received an extension of more than 3 minutes. But evidently, the member for Angleston feels entitled to more. The final matter I intend to deal with is this allegation against the chair and against me personally that somehow, because the Speaker has taken this position, the Speaker is a hater of women. Another unparliamentary statement that if the chair wishes can result in the suspension of the member who made those remarks. The PLP leader's allegation by the Speaker is a classic gutter politics and a complete disrespect of our women whom he insidiously purports to be uplifting. This is a grossly transparent political attempt to exploit the intelligence and emotion of Bahamian women and to undermine the office of the Speaker and thereby bring the institution of the Parliament of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas into disrepute. One would have thought that the failed referendum under 2 recent political leadership races were ample lessons that our Bahamian women are not fools. I cry shame on the member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador. Ordinarily, I would not respond to such nonsense. But the honorable member, and I wish he was still present so I can address him directly. He has provoked the chair and forced the chair to defend my integrity. While I can give you more than 90 reasons why the member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador allegation is absurd, absolutely absurd, I shall confine my response to the fact that I am married to a beautiful and wonderfully made Baintown woman. For the past 38 years. And I want to emphasize to the member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador that my wife is an indigenous Bahamian woman. And that I have had, over those 38 years, no reason for a divorce. Our marriage has been touted by the church, marriage groups, and by the Broadcasting Corporation of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas as a model love affair. And as a husband, I have been deemed a role model of how husbands should love and treat their wives. And the member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador, he is fully aware of past encounters with myself, that I do not have a track record of hating women. You know, the member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador and I have a mutual best friend. And if the member had consulted our best friend on this matter, I'm sure he would have been advised not to leave that part and to leave this matter alone. Notwithstanding, the member has allowed, in my estimation, reprobates and perverts with track records of denying and hating women to incite such a ludicrous assertion into his press release. My name might begin with M, but the first three letters are M-O-U and not M-I-T. Don't mix me up. I am not a soft powder puff man. I am a real man. And while I may not be able to engage in the debate, I am certainly permitted to defend my integrity. I love my wife, an indigenous Maine and Grandstown woman, and I highly cherish and respect all women. But I happen also to agree with King Solomon in Proverbs 21 and 19. It says, what it says to the effect is, it is better to live in the desert, to live in the home with a quarrelsome woman. I'm arriving at the end. The DVD recordings of the broadcast of the parliamentary channel may not be the official records of Parliament, but Rule 89.1, depending on which one of the rule books you might have, provides that the broadcasting of House proceedings shall present a dignified, accurate, and consistent image of the House and committee proceedings. It is this Speaker's intention to advance this Parliament and to bring its infrastructure and technology in line with other modern parliaments in our Commonwealth. In so doing, and to discourage any insidious attempt by members to steal headlines while we wait for the Hansard record to be transcribed, the Chair will be proposing the introduction of instant replay, similar to the NBA and the NFL and the Cyclops of the WTA, so that when members abuse or act ultra-virus the rules, commit flagrant violations, fumble the point of order or the point of privilege, or even when the call on the field by the chair may be challenged and changed, that there is no lag, no gaps, and no more, as the Hansard records reflect, an honorable member's remark is inaudible. Finally, the chair wishes to assure all members that the chair will defend the ancient privileges of this parliament, especially the privilege of freedom of speech, notwithstanding that we are governed and constrained by rules, and the chair will maintain order and enforce the rules. In conclusion, let me assure all members that it is not a personal matter for me. I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And as a believer and an ordained minister, I am guided by Ephesians 6 and 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. The decorum, dignity, and fidelity of this parliament will be maintained. All principalities, darkness, and wickedness will be withdrawn, expunged, suspended, and driven out by expulsion. And members, I advise you to govern yourselves accordingly. Now, as this matter is of such a serious nature, I now wish to invite all members to speak, or now or forever be governed and guided by the peace that this day will bring. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the extraordinary nature of what has taken place in here this morning, and the fact that you, Mr. Speaker, as the High Court of the judge of the High Court of Parliament, has given us leave to speak to this issue, we are well within the rules then to speak to it, though not necessarily completely to the motion. And so, Mr. Speaker, let me commend you on the way you have conducted yourself as the judge of the High Court of Parliament during the time since our election and since you having been named and taking that seat. I think it was on May 24th. Mr. Speaker, I think to all and sundry, they would see that given what you have spoken to in speaking to the scripture in and of itself, that you would have been true to yourself, true to this honorable house, and true to the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, I'm reminded of a scripture, as I am often fond of doing in this place, and known for doing in this place. It says in Micah 6 and 8 that I have shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of thee? That in all circumstances, Mr. Speaker, that we first do justice. Yes. It says, love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Mr. Speaker, the entire process of what goodness is laid out in that scripture spoken nearly 3,000 years ago by a shepherd living on the highlands of Israel. And Mr. Speaker, we would have seen in your deliberation and judgment in this parliament today that you would have done just that, Mr. Speaker. Justice requires that the member for Engliston, in her actions and in the things that she did, and as you would have spoken to, and this parliament had agreed, she was named, Mr. Speaker. But the book says justice is something we do. It is not something we love. It tells us what we ought to love. It says, love mercy. And Mr. Speaker, in the love of mercy, you would have, though the Bahamian people, and some would have been clamoring for those maximum of 2 days expulsion, 2 sittings. The people wanted 2 sittings in addition to today. You, in your ruling and showing and loving mercy, agreed that the sitting would commence with last week Wednesday and this sitting, so that at the very next sitting of Parliament, the member for Engliston would have been present in this place and able to have her voice heard in these honorable chambers. And so, Mr. Speaker, as I started commending you, I want to end there commending you, because I believe that the Bahamian people who have observed the entire record of what have taken place this morning would know that we, in keeping with both the rules of this House, would have done that which is good. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I will sit, and I know others may probably want to speak in regards to the extraordinary events that has taken place in this Parliament.
As many, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am privileged to serve in this honorable place on behalf of the great people of Elizabeth. When I walk beyond that bar, I come here not for me, but to represent the people who put me here. Mr. Speaker, I believe that they expect me to show up on time. Yes. They expect me to comport myself with dignity, with grace, and with honor. Yes. They expect me to be respectful, to be prepared, and to defend their interests. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is interesting that on the 24th of January 2018, I would have risen in this place on a point of order. I was aggrieved, I was offended by an assertion made by the honorable member for Engliston. After being recognized, Mr. Speaker, I would have stated the basis of my concern, of the point of order. I hold in my hand, Mr. Speaker, the supreme law of the land. It's called the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. It is the very instrument that defines who we are and what we do. The Constitution of the Bahamas gives us great flexibility, Mr. Speaker. We are lawmakers. But the supreme law of the land remains the Constitution. And so when we talk about the privilege of members in this place, nothing that we do, nothing that we say can offend the rights protected by this great Constitution. And so while we may have the privilege to have freedom of speech, we do not have the privilege to destroy or to damage the reputations of other individuals, be they sitting members of this place, or in that other place, or in the wider community. We must understand, Mr. Speaker, that ultimately, if we are to be considered honorable men and women, that we must act as such. And so I was offended. There are people, young people, old people, watching us every day. They do not like what they see. And when we behave in a manner that leads to a diminution of the public's respect for us, then we have lost our way. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, every day that I walk into this place, I must ask myself whether or not I bring value, dignity to this place for the people of the Bahamas. The member for Engliston has been appropriately chastised and punished for unparliamentary behavior. If anybody else were to make assertions that were not backed up by evidence, they should suffer the same fate. And so I applaud you, Mr. Speaker. I applaud this great House for the course that it has taken. I hope that in my tenure here, that I can live up to the expectations and make the people of Elizabeth proud. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to support the decision of the chair that I find is in order in the circumstances of this case. Mr. Speaker, I want to open by saying Galatians 5 and 9, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think it is right and it is proper at this time, while we're early on in this administration, to nip things in the bud. Mr. Speaker, we have to nip it in the bud. I see, Mr. Speaker, that your role, and I being a first-time member, is to maintain law and order in this House. Mr. Speaker, to the extent that the rule of law is upheld, and to the extent that every member, senior, been here 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, respects the chair, respects every member in this House. Mr. Speaker, you had to nip it in the bud. Mr. Speaker, Article 50 of the Constitution informs me that you've been elected by all members here. There was no objection. There was agreement. We all agreed that, Mr. Speaker, you were the best man for the job, a man of integrity, decency, track record of honesty. Mr. Speaker, you bring integrity to that chair. And so, Mr. Speaker, you were in your right, as far as I am concerned, and playing your role to nip it in the bud. Mr. Speaker, I see your role as one as parliamentary leader. Mr. Speaker, and the leader must be respected, and the chair should be heard in silence. As a matter of fact, while I sat and I stood in the other House, Mr. Speaker, the rule is the chair, or there should be obeisance to the chair. Mr. Speaker, I did not see it by the honorable member for Angliston. I saw a blatant disregard. And Mr. Speaker, you had to nip it in the bud. The Speaker preserves order in the chamber, rules on parliamentary question, and is the official spokesperson of the House. Mr. Speaker, once you would have spoken, that is it. That is what we teach the children in school. Once the leader or the teacher speaks and they're in charge of the classroom, you take your seat. Mr. Speaker, these are fundamental disciplines that we have learned, and it is important for us when we come here to be examples to the children and to the members of the society. And so, Mr. Speaker, you had to nip it in the bud. And I know it was difficult for you because I have been here a little while and I've seen persons able to do and say certain things. And I say, boy, the Speaker really patient, you know. But, Mr. Speaker, on that occasion when a member, while the chair was speaking, walked out, Mr. Speaker, you had no other choice but to nip it in the bud. Mr. Speaker, we must respect one another while we are here. We're all honorable members. And debates should be conducted in an orderly fashion, in my opinion. We're not only doing this for us, but for the Bahamian people, and so that persons, even by way of recording, can understand and get an appreciation of the bills we're laying before this House and the items that are being debated. It can't be done by persons popping up like popcorn. Mr. Speaker, this is not a movie theater. This is not a movie theater, and so I really appreciate you taking a stand so we all are governed, as you would have said earlier, by these rules. Mr. Speaker, and you know, you said it at the beginning, that every member is to abide by the rules. And so, Mr. Speaker, I've been married 20 years, you 38, I congratulate you, but my husband always told me, what a man say from the beginning, he say what he say, and he mean what he say. If you want to turn it another way, that's your business. So from the beginning, Mr. Speaker, I do recall you saying that you are going to run this House by the rules, and everyone is to be held accountable. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm wrapping up to say you had to nip it in the bud. Mr. Speaker, I'm a little concerned because, Mr. Speaker, and I'm offended. I'm offended because of the disruptive behavior that I would have seen, especially on the date in question. Mr. Speaker, and the constant use of objectionable language, Mr. Speaker. I don't care. Do what you want. Mr. Speaker, we can't speak to the chair this way, and if you had not nipped this in the bud, who knows where we would have gone next in our language to the chair. It could not continue. And so, Mr. Speaker, you had to make a decision and have tough love today. Mr. Speaker, I've seen that there was disregard for the authority of the chair. You would have indicated to a member to sit down. Members back up. Sit down. Member is back up like popcorn. Mr. Speaker, it could not continue. And this morning you would have seen the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador, while the chair was speaking, sought to stand and disregard and disrespect the chair once again. That is why, Mr. Speaker, you had to do what you do and nip it in the bud. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we should not reduce, in my opinion, every situation to a gender issue. It's unfortunate. It does nothing, in my opinion, to the advancement of the equality of women. And I am grateful, Mr. Speaker, to have been elected by the women of Parliament, to lead the women in Parliament, to say to the women, we will not, under my watch, reduce every issue to a gender issue. Let us deal with the principle of the matter. Let us deal with issues. And if we want to be treated on the same footing, we all will face the same chastisement. And what I saw equally so this morning, Mr. Speaker, was a fair chair. The same thing you did with the member for Angliston, you were willing to do and did with regard to the member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador. You were consistent. The member for Exumas and Ragged Island, the member for South and Central Andros. Mr. Speaker, the same thing you did across the board, and that is equality. Mr. Speaker, you had to nip it in the bud. I want to finally say, Mr. Speaker, that I have known you, Mr. Speaker, for at least 10 years. And Mr. Speaker, and I have seen you and I've known your lovely wife. Mr. Speaker, and I can tell you around about your 38th anniversary, she said to me, because I tell her I was celebrating my 20th in August past, and she said, the same man that I knew when I was a young lady, very young, she said, he is the same man today, 38 years later in the marriage. So, Mr. Speaker, let's make this clear. Your record of being respectful and one of integrity, and I want to encourage you this morning, is one that has been in this house, when you're out this house, when you're around about the house, whether you're on top of the house, you're the same Halson D. Moultrie, if I may say, Mr. Speaker, that I have known for 10 years. And Mr. Speaker, you have not changed. And so I support this decision to nip it in the bud. I support this decision to ensure that fairness, honesty, integrity of this house is maintained and law and order is upheld, even in the House of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I support.
As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central and South Abaco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe my colleagues have already done an eloquent job already. But I'd just like to add that as parliamentarians, I believe we all encounter these situations regularly where there is the comfortable choice, the easy choice, the path of least resistance. And then there is the right choice, which you, Mr. Speaker, have made. You have made that right decision. It doesn't always boil down to what we always try and wrap ourselves in these particular things, but there is the right issues, and then there are the distractions. If we do not stand up for our parliamentary democracy, then who will? We need to be the ones to do it. We need to adhere to our rules. We need to enforce our rules. That is the only way the business of this House will ever get done. And that is only possible by the Speaker and the Parliament enforcing and adhering to these rules, which you have done. So I commend you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank you And I certainly hope that in the days to come, as the opposition to your decision may build, that you have a parliament that stands behind you and is willing to work with you to continue the work of the people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Fort Charlotte.
Speaker, before I begin, Mr. Speaker, I just want to extend condolences to 3 families in Fort Charlotte that have lost loved ones this week, on the past week. The Carroll family on Providence Avenue, Lawrence, Pam, Michaela, and the rest of the family who lost their father, Noel Carroll, this week. I'd also like to extend condolences to Charles and Philip Turner on the passing of their mother, Miss Alana Turner from Boyd Road, and to my neighbor, Tonya Riley Knowles, on the passing of her mother, Jennifer Riley Roberts, who passed away unexpectedly also last week. Mr. Speaker, today is a sad day in Parliament, and I say it's a sad day, an awfully sad day, because of the attack on law and order and justice in this high place. It's not only an attack, Mr. Speaker, but that's not what really makes it a sad day. But what makes it a sad day is that several of the perpetrators of these misguided attacks against law and order are men and women who are sworn to uphold the law. The code of conduct of their profession says that the key quality expected of these individuals, these men and women, is integrity, Mr. Speaker. It says that if these men and women of the law are lacking in professional integrity, their usefulness and their reputation will be destroyed, regardless of how competent they are. Dishonorable or questionable conduct on their part, the code says, Mr. Speaker, will reflect poorly upon the integrity of the profession and the administration of law. So it's a sad day, Mr. Speaker, for me to watch these men and women who are sworn to uphold the law lend their support and try to justify what is at the heart of this matter, wrong behavior. And in an attempt to address or lend support to this wrong behavior, a member from Cat Island, who I hold in high regard, released a statement saying that the action towards member of Angliston the naming and suspension of Angliston emanated from her attempt to protect jobs of women with children. From where I sat during this unfortunate exchange, I was watching it in disbelief, in disbelief at what I saw from these senior statesmen. That's what the member from Angliston, I always remembered during the exchange, she would jump up and tell me, I'm a newbie, just reach. She's a senior statesman, someone who I would expect better from. But from the unfortunate exchange, Mr. Speaker, the member from Cat Island was not only misleading, he was wrong. And that's the sad part about it, he was wrong. If I remember correctly, the naming and suspension of the member emanated from her lack of, or her inability to adhere to the laws of this place. Didn't have anything to do with her seeking to protect anybody's rights. The suspension happened, and I watched it in disbelief, when she disrespectfully walked out of the house as you were addressing her. I don't know where they sort of mixed that up and invented some new reality. It was quite clear. Her suspension emanated from her disrespectfully walking out of this place in the middle of your address to her. You know, we got some bigoted people in this country. They tell you, do what you want. I don't care. And then when you do what you want, then they start to cry about what you do to them. Yeah? Never look at themselves. So you were right in doing what you did. The member for Cal Island said, this isn't a classroom. And as somebody who spent over 20-odd years in the classroom, he's correct, and he should be glad it's not a classroom. Because grace, your grace and mercy says she could come back after 2 sittings. In our profession, if someone would have done that, no amount of grace and mercy could have brought them back into that classroom. The dean could have said, the chair could have said, that type of disrespect would have said you need to find a new class. So I honor you, sir, for allowing her to come back. She's my friend, but wrong is wrong. Wrong is wrong. Wrong is wrong. You said whenever the chair is speaking, all members should be quiet. You said it several times. Both Cat Island Cat Island. I ain't trying to invent nothing new in here. But both Cat Island are more than adequately aware of the rules. And let me tell you why. I say, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to wrap up a little bit. Why I say they are more than aware of the rules. On June, like you said, on June 15, 2017, in my first contribution in here, I made some comments about $48 million going missing from the Road Traffic Department during the time that Angleston served. She called me out in dramatic fashion, like the member said, popping up and down like popcorn. She said, I call on the member to lay on the table of the House evidence that $48 million, and I quote her, went missing. Otherwise, he should withdraw it, and it should be struck from the records. That's what she said to me. Well, I can get there. Even when I rephrased myself, she wasn't satisfied. I'm asking the member to either substantiate or withdraw. It's a simple matter. She made the request to me through you. And at least 5 more times after that, she said, it's a simple thing. It's just normal. If you can substantiate, withdraw. That's what she said to me. Simple. It's a simple thing. Well, I can tell you right now. After Angleston preached at me, it's a simple thing. I didn't misconstrue her persistence for me to withdraw as an indication of her denying me my ability to speak freely. I didn't do that. Yeah, it was because it wasn't an issue about freedom of speech. Or I didn't take it as an expression of her dislike of, contempt for, that's what the member Cat Island said when he attacked you. I didn't take it as her dislike of, her contempt of, or her ingrained prejudice of men. I didn't take it as any of that, sir. I took it as a matter of right or wrong. If I couldn't substantiate it at the time, no matter how I knew or believed what I believed, I had to withdraw. That's what I did, member. Not only is that common law, it is law of common sense. So from that point on, it was about self-restraint and discipline. Because even though, Mr. Member for Elizabeth, I may have had license to speak freely, I was not at liberty to speak in such a manner as per the rules of this House. I think the member mixes up license and liberty. That's what we saw here last week. And personal right and entitlement. Yeah, entitlement. And kind of wrap it up. So, I said, and I wish the member was here so I could have said it to him and his other sympathizers who continue to support in this unjustified wrong. I said to her, I said to you, Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time, and until I could once again bring to this House and appease the member for Angleton, I will withdraw my statements and move on. It was simple. No harm done. No one would be here wasting the people's time trying to decide my fate. Because it was a simple thing. No one would be outside, crowds weeping for me. Because it was a simple thing. There would be no one fighting for me or asking to justify my wrong behavior because it was a simple thing. It's a shame that the member for Angleton, Mr. Speaker, couldn't even follow her own advice. Just withdraw. It was a simple thing. She would have been here today as the voice for Angleton. So, Mr. Speaker, as I close, I caution us because I see it so many times outside. I caution them, not us. Because this says we don't support wrong. The member for Ragged Island said, I thought I would have seen you outside, referring to me, for that little press conference, because she's your cousin. They're saying, yeah, but I don't, it ain't about doing foolishness, it's about supporting wrong. Family or not, you don't support wrong. Yeah? And I think we have to be careful when we rally up. This is a gang culture. This is what we see. When you do wrong and don't take action for your wrongs, and you rally up other people to come and fight for your wrong. She was wrong. But in your favor, you're granting her a little bit of mercy by allowing her to come in. You're a good man. You're a good man, sir. You're patient and kind. You said it to her. She's playing on your patience, something to that effect. You're a good man. And I commend you for that, because as an educator, if it were I, she wouldn't have come back. 5 years. No makeups, no do-overs. But anyhow, Mr. Speaker, again, this member supports the decision because Grace and Mercy has me here too. But so, again, I would like to, stand in support of your decision, sir, and ask that my colleagues on the side opposite and all their sympathizers, in the name of decency, stop the charade. Tell the people the truth. Tell your member the truth. And correct this wrong action. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fox Hill.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the wonderful people of the great constituency of Fox Hill. Mr. Speaker, soon after you took your post, as you walked up and down this chamber to your chair, someone remarked that the speaker reminded him of somebody's doting and benevolent grandfather. Grandfathers tend to let grandchildren go where they didn't let their children go. And so those grandchildren take great liberties, Mr. Speaker. So while Seabreeze, Mr. Speaker, said you had to nip it in the bud, it's not with temerity, but, Mr. Speaker, it went on too long, in my estimation. You, in your generous heart, as a grandfather, allowed it to go on too long, and I am here to support you that you finally said enough is enough. Mr. Speaker, I am reminded of my younger days, and I am from a village, a little village, a traditional village. And by its very definition, villagers live simple lives. Good morning, good afternoon, yes sir, yes ma'am. That's the way it is. And I have a little story, Mr. Speaker. We stayed at our grandmother's house during the summer months. No running water, so we had to go to Miss Baby Bell's well to draw water. Miss Baby Bell smoked a pipe, and she sat on her back step in the morning smoking the pipe. I drew the water, I walked past her, drew the water out of her well, and proceeded to walk home. And she stopped me and she said, "Chanel, did we sleep together last night?" And I said, "No, Miss Baby Bell, you slept in your house, I slept in my grandmother's house." And I proceeded on my way home. I don't know where the belt came from. I just remember when it hit me. And Mr. Speaker, that perhaps began my athletic career because I ran. But that's how villagers deal with no manners.
Yes.
And they often told us, if you don't listen, you certainly feel. Mr. Speaker, on January the 28th, 40 of us went to Rehoboth Baptist Church on Prince Charles Drive. The senior pastor there is Reverend Dr. Philip Ramming. He wrote the pledge. And then on the 2nd of February, Friday, we went to visit Miss Gwendolyn Clark, who turned 104 years old. And on Sunday, we went to church with her. And Zednes came along and said to her, "What do you have to say to the young people of our country?" And she said, "Listen to your mothers, listen to your fathers, listen to your teachers, have manners, and things will go well with you." Mr. Speaker, I support your ruling, and Engliston is an activist, and that's not bad in and of itself. But whatever you do, there are rules and there are regulations. There are paths that you must travel, and if you allow some leeway to move off the path a little bit, but when you go too far off the path, then you must be drawn back in. Mr. Speaker, hold fast. The rules and the regulations will make this place the place it is supposed to be. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, in 5 years, we would not have achieved much because we would have spent too much time trying to right the ship. Mr. Speaker, I support you.
The chair recognizes the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Mr. Speaker, fellow parliamentarians, good day. I rise on behalf of the tenacious constituents of West Grand Bahama and Bimini, a place that has not only captured my heart, but has become fuel to my fire and the number one reason I am able to voice all of my concerns in this parliament. As a newcomer to the political arena, Mr. Speaker, I consider myself having gained the trust and confidence of the majority of voters in West Grand Bahama and Bimini some 8.5 months ago. I must admit, however, that the past few months has been both rewarding and challenging as a newbie in this honorable house, as well as outside the confines of this chamber. I have witnessed numerous points of order, debates and motions being brought and seconded, bills being tabled, and so on and so on. I've experienced laughter, and yes, I've shed a tear or two. This House, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding an occasional outburst here and there, is an honorable place. It's a place in which we all ought to be mindful of how we conduct ourselves. There has to be respect of and towards each other, and the understanding that we are all elected to serve and that no one person is any more important than the next. What each and every one of us has to offer is significant in the scheme of things as we work towards a better country. We are all here using our voices to bring to the forefront the plight of our constituents with the aim of ensuring that they are all represented well, their stories told, and their concerns addressed. I say that to say, Mr. Speaker, that while all of us in here have a role to play, yours is an arduous task. With the many personalities and voices that you are subject to familiarizing yourself with and hearing, Mr. Speaker, I sometimes wonder how you get it done. On entering this chamber for the first time and witnessing you walk through those doors, I was in complete awe. I saw your stature as one of strength and your demeanor still with humility. The Speaker's robe was made for you, sir. You wear it well and conduct yourself quite exemplary while in it. Mr. Speaker, truth be told, what transpired during the last proceedings of this House involving the member of Angliston was bound to happen sooner or later. As you sat in that chair time and time again, I saw the way the member opposite on more than one occasion was asked to take a seat, but instead challenged you and your authority. Some may argue that the member was well within her right on last week, but I beg to differ. The mere fact that when you, as the Speaker of this House, would have requested an action to take place, and there was defiance to that order, is already disrespect towards the chair. Mr. Speaker, I honestly believe the MP for Angliston to be a strong representative and one that uses her voice to champion many causes. But the manner in which she does it, Mr. Speaker, is questionable. Mr. Speaker, interestingly enough, following the MP for Angliston's abrupt departure from this House, an entire media blitz ensued with the aim of discrediting your stance taken here in this honorable House. You were not wrong, Mr. Speaker. In fact, House rules clearly indicate that you were well within your rights. Mr. Speaker, as members of the opposite, and by extension their party, just a few months ago refused to have the MP for Angliston speak at their convention, it's amazing how, at this point in time, they're all about asking why she was unable to speak. They should have asked that question a long time ago. Mr. Speaker, where was the media blitz then? Wrong were members of the opposite who wanted to win at any cost during the last election. The way that they're dealing with this, Mr. Speaker, is usually going on all the time. They find ways, Mr. Speaker, to distract the Bahamian populace, but distracted we will not allow. Mr. Speaker, they may try and distort what took place as much as they like, But the Bahamian populace is more than aware that members opposite will try just about anything to discredit what this current administration embarks upon and to wreak havoc for no other reason than to be disruptive. Try as they may, Mr. Speaker, we are all onto their PR tactics and deceptive measures. This is no longer the PLP's house. This is the people's house. And the people's business will be taken care of. Mr. Speaker, there is no time for temper tantrums or smoke screens, nor can we slow down our pace for those crying wolf. Instead, Mr. Speaker, we cry shame on members of the opposite for continuously wasting our time and that of the Bahamian people with fancy PR strategies and make-believe stories. The time has come, Mr. Speaker, for order in this House, and you, Mr. Speaker, remain on the right path in doing just that. West Grand Bahama and Bimini supports your decision, Mr. Speaker, and we say, carry on.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think it was God's work that I would have the opportunity to speak after the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini. Speaker, I stand here this morning proudly representing the people of Tall Pines and proudly as your deputy in this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, I could say without a doubt, and I think I speak for you, I don't think you called the leadership of the party and asked for this job. I certainly didn't. But we accepted this job gracefully and thanking our members for placing their confidence in us. Mr. Speaker, you most especially, as the champion of this House, as the leader of this House, with respect to the rules and regulations of this House, you have a human duty to the Bahamian people, not the Tall Pines alone, not the Angliston, not the Cat Island, but the Bahamian people, and what democracy stands for in this country. And so I stand here, Mr. Speaker, as your deputy, because many a times, Mr. Speaker, I would also be in the position that you were in and that you remain in today. And I have to support what this honorable speaker has done, did last week, and unfortunately had to do this morning. Mr. Speaker, you were very clear in outlining the fact that this chair maintained the rules of this honorable House. You spoke to Rule 88, 3 and 4, that showed that you had the right to do what you did, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that you mentioned the former clerk's position, but more specifically, the fact that there was no mention of the actions of the honorable member for Angliston. Speaker, that was very interesting when I read it also, but I'm going to leave that because I think you did enough with that one. Speaker, I want to reiterate to the Bahamian people that your actions was not about women, that your actions, Mr. Speaker, was not about political motivation. Your action was not about whom they spoke about were politically, that there was a motivation to fire some persons in Eleuthera. It was not about an ambush, Mr. Speaker. It was not about the people of Angliston per se. It was about maintaining the rules of this House. And Mr. Speaker, the good member for Angliston is one of the most senior members in this House. I think 20 years, Mr. Speaker. 20 years. And Mr. Speaker, it's trite. It's trite that when the speaker is speaking, you sit and you be quiet. It's trite you could only speak when you're acknowledged by the speaker. Speaker, it's trite that there should be respect for this chair by every single member of this House, whether you be the government or whether you be the opposition. strike, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have a responsibility, both you and I go beyond that, all of us in this House, to maintain the integrity of this House. We have one of the longest spanning democracies in this hemisphere. One of the longest and one of the most respected, Mr. Speaker. And we're not going to allow any member, I don't care how long she's been in this House, I don't care who she represents, because this is the people's house, this is the Bahamian people's house. This is Tor Pines' house, this is Kalani's house, this is Eleuthera's house, North-South, Abacoa's house, North Andros, South Andros' house, Mr. Speaker. And every single member has a duty to respect the chair and respect, Mr. Speaker, these rules, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, several members talked about drama, and I sat here about movies and so forth. It went to me, because I sit here, Mr. Speaker, and as a rookie member, and I happen to be positioned in a very good place. And I watch the drama, the political drama going on, Mr. Speaker. I watch it, the theatrics. And I watched, Mr. Speaker, last week when the members turned around to North and South Eleuthera and mentioned the two ladies, Mr. Speaker. I sat and I said, look at this game going on here, Speaker. And I watched it. And as the drama took place, Mr. Speaker, I noticed, the leader, Cat Island, wanted to leave, but Angleston was saying, no, this my show. The Speaker, the Cat Island wanted to leave, but Angleston saying, no, I could watch it, Mr. Speaker. And what happened? Angleston got up and left. Cat Island followed. Drama, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, it reminded me of a show when I was growing up named Dallas, We always wondered who shot JR. Who shot JR, Speaker? And, as a young person, I was watching it, me wondering who shot JR. Me wondering if it was Sue Ellen. Everybody said, but Sue Ellen shot JR. But I'm going to just say to JR, watch your back. It's a show. The member spoke about the convention. It's a show, Mr. Speaker. It's about who's in charge, Mr. Speaker. But I'm going to say, and I know you made reference to the wife, Mr. Speaker, that when you don't have a good, it's better to not be with a wife. And I don't think you were speaking to the wife of the member for Cat Island, because she's a wonderful lady. We hug and kiss every Sunday in church. Wonderful lady. I say to JR, watch Sue Ellen. Watch Sue Ellen, Mr. Speaker. Watch Sue Ellen. Now, Mr. Speaker, watch this. You have JR, Bobby, and Gary gone today. But who's going to be here next week? Sue Ellen, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, stand your grounds, Mr. Speaker. I definitely will stand my ground. And I know the people of Angleston has nothing to fear in this chair. The people of Angleston have nothing to fear with any of us here. We want Angleston to be heard. The member for Kalani made that very clear just 2 days ago. We want Angleston to be heard. We want every constituency to be heard. But we will not, Mr. Speaker, and I know you will not. You will not allow any member to take advantage of these rules. Mr. Speaker, and I'm going to end on this, and you made the point. Over and over in the hand side, you will see, after the chair keeps saying, sit, an honorable member's remark inaudible. And that simply was many a times the member for Angleston, because the mics can't pick up. And I wondered, and the member said it, and you and I speak on many occasions when we conclude and we speak. I feel like, Mr. Speaker, what's wrong with Angleston? And you had patience beyond Job, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, if I was there, I probably would have asked her to leave long time. Mr. Speaker, hold your grounds. Tor Pines support you. Your members from all of these other constituencies support you. And I say to JR, Bobby, and Gary, watch Sue Ellen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to give thanks to God for allowing me this opportunity to stand again in this honorable place. I also want to thank the wonderful and exciting people of the Michael constituency for giving me this opportunity to be their voice in this honorable place. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure them that under the leadership of the Honorable Dr. Hubert A. Minnis, Prime Minister, a compassionate, caring leader, we will make their lives much better than we made it on May 10th, 2017. No, things have not stopped. We are busy dealing with those who set themselves up as giants, making sure that in this term, no one else does the same, because giants, they do fall. Mr. Speaker, we are faced with conflicting desires, no matter how spiritual we are. Those desires can sometimes lead to roadblocks, and we cannot avoid them. In my view, they lead to good or bad consequences or an end result. Mr. Speaker, honorable members in this place, we have a standard that we all must abide by. Mr. Speaker, it is said that 89% of what people learn comes through visual stimulation, 10% through audible stimulation, and 1% through other senses. So what we hear, they understand. What they see, they believe. Therefore, what we need is not a mere model to repeat, but a model to see. And to this end, I want you to know that I support your position. Even God himself has law and order, line on line, and precepts on precepts. And whenever there comes a time when the rights and the rule of law seems to be disobeyed in the fashion that I have seen and noticed from time repeatedly over and over again, the chair has the power, you as the speaker, has the power to correct it and not allow it to proceed in the fashion that it look as if it want to continue. I'm reminded of the Bible. The Word of God said that there was a great war in heaven. And the war was about Michael and the archangels. They sought to conduct themselves in a disorderly manner. And being the God that I know him to be, a God of order, rules, and regulations, called for the other archangels to bind up Michael and the rest of the disorderly angels, and they threw them out of heaven. And so, Mr. Speaker, you're on the right track. My parents, the late Mr. Kenneth Alexander Reckley and the late Sabalita Adams Reckley, they taught us well. I am the 7th of 10 daughters. And I recall as we began to mature and move on to take marriage and family, one of the things that my father often say to us as his daughters, if you want to remain a lady, if you want to remain treated as a lady, then you must behave like a lady. And he said, if there ever comes a time when you have to come back to this house and say to me as your father that your husband shook you or give you a slap or punch you in your mouth, I will analyze, while I listen to you, but I will analyze the consequences that would have caused your husband to probably shake you, slap you, or punch you in your mouth. And I said, Oh, simply what my father was saying, that we ought to respect each other, have respect for your priest, your provider, and your protector. So, in this honorable house, it's no exception from a marriage relationship. If you, as a woman, want to come up in your husband's face and behave like you're a man, my father said, then you will get manhandled. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have watched you, your patience, your tolerance, and there were times when I look at you and say, what a compassionate, merciful man is this. I've heard you've been married for 38 years. And I know it's because of your patience. And so, Mr. Speaker, we cannot allow this type of behavior to continue in this honorable place. Because there's great cloud of witnesses. The Bahamian people, our kids, are watching what's happening in this honorable place. And yes, there's backlash because of the stand that you took. But, Mr. Speaker, if doing what is right is wrong, I don't want you to be right. The fact of the matter is that God have laws, rules, and orders, and we are expected to obey them. There are consequences when we don't obey the rule of God. And certainly in terms of when it comes to the physical aspect, if we break the law, there are consequences. And so, you know, it puzzles me, you know, as I sit back and watch things unfold. How is it that we want a country where it's crime-free? We want a country where there will be not all of the turbulence and the issues that we're faced with on a daily basis. And we have honorable men, women who have been elected to this honorable house to serve the Bahamian people and do not know how to conduct themselves in a manner whereby persons who have elected us could look at us, trust us, believe us, and want to be just like us. It's amazing when you look and see that people want you to celebrate wrong, want you to come down of what you stand for. But may I remind us that character is who you are when no one is looking. You cannot find it in a food store. You cannot get it from a library. But it all starts from within. And guess what? Honesty is still the best policy. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage you to continue to stand. You're a man. And you show them, not only being a man, but you show them in this honorable house the leverage that she has been given. You a good man. And ain't much like you. And so, Mr. Speaker, lift your head up. Continue to do what is right. And know that I support you. And again, sir, Mr. Speaker, if doing what is right is wrong, I don't want you to be right.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for South Beach.
Mr. Speaker, rise on the authority, grace, generosity of the people of South Beach. Sir, I wish to begin by stating for the record, which probably needs no restatement, that I have known you for nearly 50 years. And as was identified earlier, you are the same yesterday as you are today, and will probably, as our friendship has attested, will be tomorrow. And that is a man, a person of unequaled and impeccable integrity,
respect, honor, and discipline. And it is probably why you and I have found such intimacy in friendship over these past 5 decades. Few may know, Mr. Speaker, that you are an individual given to a no-nonsense character. But at the same time, sir, in the evolution of your personality, having been touched by the redeeming blood of Jesus Christ, you have been also further seized with a sense of humility and respect. Mr. Speaker, in addition to being a privileged member of this House for the people of South Beach, I am also charged through the graces of the member of Kalani, the Prime Minister, with responsibility for assisting in the evolution and the awakening and the invitation to life of approximately 75,000 of our wonderful, gifted, beautiful young people. And in the first instance of my address in this honorable space, sir, I made a statement which I wish to repeat at this time. Education is everybody's business. It is not in the respectful or exclusive domain of professional educators or the administration of the Ministry of Education or the Department of Education, but rather it is a society's obligation and responsibility. And to that degree and in that respect, sir, I wish to congratulate and endorse and express how grateful I am to you, sir, for assisting in extinguishing the galloping culture of slackness that we find in our Bahamian society. One that seems to be seized with this mindset, poisonous, I may respectfully suggest to you, sir, in which our people seem to think that they can do as they please, when they please, and how they please, without any consequences for their action. In fact, Mr. Speaker, this pervasive and pernicious culture has so gripped and seized a too large percentage of our 75,000 population school members that we find a repudiating sense of ill manners and disrespect and gross insubordination within the school environments in our society. And I've said repeatedly so, that I don't blame the children. I first look at the elders, which have had the responsibility of inculcating a sense of what my grandmother taught me, manners and respect. I cannot give you enough examples, sir, of instances in the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education and throughout our school system, Mr. Speaker, where people are given directives by their superiors and that they willfully, intentionally, and obstreperously refuse to obey. That means rude. And what is troubling, sir? What is troubling, Mr. Speaker? And why I am so proud of you today, sir, is that those who seemingly would have the benefit of years of wisdom and knowledge and experience and education, who I would believe should know better, in fact are worse than the children that they are charged with the responsibility of leading. Having been given the benefit of being chosen by a constituency of persons in this great country of ours, to be a representative in this honorable space, and to take upon oneself this, again, mindset that irrespective of the rules, no matter the regulations, no matter the culture, the discipline, that they can just simply disregard the requirements of order and decency and respect in this honorable place, Mr. Speaker. It is very difficult, sir. There is a Herculean task placed upon this government and the Ministry of Education in inculcating a sense of discipline in our people. And it is no wonder, beyond the technical requirements of oracy and numeracy and literacy, Mr. Speaker, as the Inter-American Development Bank noted in 2012 with a magnanimous study, and again in 2017, it is not just simply about these technical abilities and these skills, but about these what they describe as soft skills, which essentially, again, can be reduced to two terms: manners and respect. And throughout the Latin America and Caribbean community, sir, that employers up and down this hemisphere complains about the fact that our young people come to the workplace not ready, most especially deprived of these technical skills, but in particular absent that what we call these soft skills, the ability to work with one another, teamwork, respect for one another, a sense of communication, sense of manners, a sense of respect, and that they all want to seem to do as they well please. And so, sir, this nation, sir, honors you for assisting in a manner which is before the entire nation by way of the visual medium known as television, and beginning to assist us, especially in the Ministry of Education, to advise our young people, those beginning at approximately 3 years of age until about 17, that there is a responsibility to obey rules and regulations, and that they must do so with honor and respect, sir. And wish on behalf of South Beach, sir, to continue to congratulate you and to thank you for being who you are.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for St. Anne's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to take a slightly different tack, with your leave. If my memory serves me right, the honorable member for Engleton was elected to this chamber in 2002. She came to the chamber the same year I came to the chamber, 2002. She was over here, though, and I was over there. The three of us here, if my memory serves me right, East Grand Bahama, Killarney, and myself, have had the privilege, or the hardship, of serving over there under one of their speakers. The honorable member for Killarney was named and removed from the chamber, and 2 weeks later they came back to then move some motion because they forgot to do it, and they didn't do it the way you laid out very honorably, Mr. Speaker. The honorable member for Engleton's father sat in this place, as did my father. So she would have been brought up at the feet of someone who knew the rules and the regulations for years. My father was first elected to this house in March the 13th, 1925. Served 51 years uninterrupted. Long forgotten in history. Don't worry about that. Longest serving member of the House. In those days, you came in dinner jacket at 8 o'clock at night. That's history. You sat round here. The member for Engleton's father was part of that generation which led the New Bahamas, as they call it, to where we are today. She would appreciate the difference between revolt, uprising, pushing the envelope, but he also respected the chair and the rules of this house, to the point that he told the then leader, Sir Lyndon, bye-bye, I do not want to go down that road with you. He said, you should resign too, but I'm going to resign, if my memory serves me right. Correct. That was the honor of the father of the member for Engleton. We have rules. She knows the rules. I remember one day my father told me, He stood up in this place and said something. The speaker said, well, the honorable member for whatever district he was then, will you please take that back? And he says, Mr. Speaker, I withdraw. I only wish I said more. I tell this story because they knew then, as we know now, that when you make that comment, it is out there. When you retract it, it has already been said. There is no, it's not like whatever the radio where you can push a button and cut someone from saying something. So she knew full well what she was doing, knows full well what she was doing, and continues to know full well what she was doing. And as the member, I'm glad I spoke after the member for South Beach because he talked about the educational system. So the other day there was a senior member, always on the radio, preaching against this party, came to see me. And we were talking about then and now. He said, you know what? The difference between then and now is I got a ticket from a policeman for riding my bicycle without a light on it. And I used that to compare the member of Eggleston with her father, because she knows full well where she was going. It was disrespectful without a light. No torch. No torch to show her where to go. And I just warned the member for Central Andros, well, he knows better, and Exuma, don't follow down that same path because you are going down a tunnel with no light. The three of us, at different times, sat here on that side. And we took the most incredible abuse from the speaker of the party opposite, numerous speakers. And for 2 terms, I took incredible abuse, 1 term, because in 1 term in opposition in the Senate, 1 term in government, from the speaker in the other place. And they have the gall to stand up here and accuse the speaker of saying unfairness. I remember when the member of Centerville, previous member, sat here and said, you know, just like cockroaches, you stamp them out. Said it right, might probably stand in one of these places to us right over there. That was their behavior. What a difference a day makes. Mr. Speaker, you showed mercy, you showed compassion. They have to learn what it is to be over there and remember what they did to us when we were over there, and don't say anything different because they have to follow rules that they themselves set down. And it's not good for one fella and not good for the other. The shoe is on this foot. The government of the leader for member for Killarney will show you the right, honorable, just, and merciful way to govern our Bahamas. It is a new day. This is the People's House. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to say a few words. And really, it is more in defense of this chamber than it is of any particular member or right. This House is considered to be honorable. And our traditions support that position. And I was, quite frankly, a bit disturbed this morning as you greeted the members, showing the respect of the chair to the members, and the reciprocating by the members to the chair with the customary bow, that the leader of the opposition, the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, refused to do so on 2 occasions. Mr. Speaker, I think that is a very significant and regretful thing to have happened, because it says from the outset that the side opposite intentionally has made the decision that they will not respect the chair and the authority of this House. And by doing so, through you, show disrespect to the members and to the wider Bahamian community. Mr. Speaker, that is typified of the reason we are here today making the interventions that we are today. Mr. Speaker, as the member for St. Anne's mentioned, at least 3 of us sat on that side. Me, the member for East Grand Bahama, and Kalani in the last 5 years. Mr. Speaker, the record will reflect, speaking for myself, that I stood on that side many a day and made statements. And many a day, the members on this side, I want to use the word attacked. Including the member for Angliston, who, as you will see, continues even in this city to have a special affinity for East Grand Bahama. Where they made me justify every word came out of my mouth. On many occasions, Mr. Speaker, I had to withdraw, even though I know what I said was fact. But I did the honorable thing as instructed by the Speaker, to withdraw. I remember, Mr. Speaker, on one particular occasion where the member on this side, on the then governing side, made an accusation towards me. And I got up and said to the Speaker, Mr. Speaker, he has to prove or withdraw. The Speaker told me, no, you resume your seat. You have to prove he's not right. That happened. But I didn't get up and carry on. I didn't disrespect the order of the chair. I sat down. Because that's what you do, Mr. Speaker. This place, though it appears to be out of order and chaotic, it does have some rules. And the basic rule is respect of the chair. Basic rule. You might not like the ruling. You might disagree vehemently. But you do not have the right to disrespect the chair. I remember, and most of our members here today, are new members. And I remember coming here with some of the same idea that really we don't need to be fighting with all this across the floor noise that we make. Because we are civil people and we ought to be able to say our piece, sit down, let the other person say their piece. But I was reminded that this is an adversarial chamber. And so from time to time you will have vigorous debate. But even in that, there is a level of respect and privilege that is expected of the members, such that you don't get into personal things. And at all times, you pay attention to the Speaker and his rulings. And that is all we're talking about here. Respect for this honorable House, its traditions, and its customs, Mr. Speaker. And again, I think it is instructive for all of us. I think it's instructive for the Bahamian people that while we disagree with one another, at the end of the day, for the most part, we all have the same goal, the same objective, and that is a better Bahamas. And so with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud you for taking the time to explain your position. I know it's not easy sitting in the chair of Speaker because you can't get involved in the debate, but it is no doubt that you have, to this day, defended the honor of this House. There's no way it can be accepted that members can get up while the Speaker is speaking and turn their backs on him and walk out. Absolute disrespect. And so, Mr. Speaker, while I don't want to disadvantage any constituency in this honorable House, the point has to be made that there are standards in this House, there are standards in this country, and some things we just will not tolerate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand as the last speaker for the government. And standing here, Mr. Speaker, it's all deja vu. Haven't gone through that process myself, but we still maintained that degree of respect. And what we witnessed is total disrespect. Even this morning, Mr. Speaker, as you stood and you bowed, it was quite evident that the leader of the opposition showed no respect and stood straight, stiff, without bowing to show respect to you. And he did it on 2 separate occasions. But this cannot be tolerated and must be stopped. And the Honorable House, Mr. Speaker, this Honorable House is deserving of honorable behavior. The proceedings of this House are televised throughout the Bahamas and, in fact, throughout the world. Our young kids are watching, parents are watching, men, women, and they are watching our behavior. They are watching our activities, how we respond. They are watching our mannerism and how we respect each other. Because what they see is what they believe is the correct thing to do. And it saddens me, Mr. Speaker, as Prime Minister of this Commonwealth, to have a member continuously show blatant disrespect for our chair, this House, and for other honorable members of this House. And this is not the first time such member has done this. The behavior displayed by the member of Angliston is totally dishonorable. And what example is she providing for our young, impressionable minds of our nation? Should they likewise disrespect those in authority, like their parents, the teachers, and our law enforcement officers? What is very interesting, Mr. Speaker, the member is a lawyer. And she knows if she stands in that court and disrespects the judge, then she is charged with contempt. That's authority. With that charging, she either receives a tongue lashing, which she's receiving today. She receives a fine, of which we cannot issue other than suspension, or depending on the judge's decision, she knows she can receive jail time. Then let's look at the disrespect that teachers, voices of authority. Our kids would view that, and with them disrespecting our teachers, then that can lead to loss of respect for themselves, and most importantly, bullying. And we know the impact on our society. Then, Mr. Speaker, if this disrespect continues throughout and affect our law enforcement agencies, then there's complete disruption of our society, no respect for the law. We become a lawless society. And most of all, when we lose respect for authority and the law, that breeds corruption, of which they are well knowledgeable about. Yep. Crime increase. But what this disrespect that's being displayed, that was displayed by the member for Angleton, if our young people interpret that as the norm, then that can possibly be transmitted to our parents. And Mr. Speaker, I remembered growing up, if I walked by and did not say good morning to an individual, I was disciplined not only by the individual, but I could not inform my mother that I showed disrespect for that individual because I knew that that was another beating. But we've lost that. But what you did in insisting discipline and showing your authority, you have shown our young people that authority must always be respected. Because that disrespect can span all segments of our society. Our church leaders, our churches, and eventually, who else? But our nation, Mr. Speaker, cries for peace. We cry for unity and respect for neighbors and property. Our mothers cry for peace and respect from their offspring in too many homes. And we must cry shame on those among us who do not conduct themselves with honor and decorum in this house. We must cry shame, Mr. Speaker, on those who condone this behavior and seek ways to justify it. Mr. Speaker, I leave you with these words from an unknown author. Watch your thoughts, for they become words. Watch your words, for they become action. Watch your actions, for they become habits. And watch your habits, for they become character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. Let's think, speak, and act with honor and respect in this house. Let honor, Mr. Speaker, become the habit that signifies our character, so that we will all achieve a more peaceful destiny. Mr. Speaker, you did the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. Just before we proceed with the order of business, the chair wishes to table the statement by the speaker, and we also, I think, only have 2 packages left now of the documents that were tabled for the press if they are interested. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Lying of documents by members, by ministers, correction. Statements and communication by ministers. Communication by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentations of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committee. First reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. Committee of the whole House. Third reading and passing of bills. Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to give notice of a resolution. Sorry? Notices? I'm sorry. Oh, sorry.
Member statements. Appointment of select committee. Introduction of select committee. Discharge of select committees. Notices for further meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me try that again. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to give notice of the following resolution. Whereas by Section 3(1) of the Loans Inter-American Development Bank Act, Chapter 355 of the Revised Statute Law of the Bahamas 2000, the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas may, in such manner, on such terms and subject to such conditions as may be agreed between the government and the Inter-American Development Bank, hereinafter the bank, borrow from the bank or from funds administered by the bank such sums as may be required for the purpose of financing or promoting economic and social development in the Bahamas. And whereas the bank has agreed to grant to the government financing up to the amount of $90 million in the currency of the United States of America for the purpose of financing projects in support of coastal management, airport infrastructure, and developing appropriate skills for jobs as follows: climate resilient coastal management and infrastructure, $35 million; skills for current and future jobs, $20 million; airport infrastructure programs, $35 million. And whereas the projects are expected to undertake inter alia the following activities: A, create natural barriers to address coastal erosion; B, construction of seawalls on Grand Bahama and New Providence; C, construction and or improvements to the existing terminals and runways at North Eleuthera, Treasury Key, Abaco, Marsh Harbor, Abaco, and Exuma; D, enhancement of the labor process to ensure that job seekers are qualified and prepared for the labor market; and E, construction of new facilities for the Ministry of Labor. And whereas the Ministry of Finance proposes to raise the sum of $90 million in the currency of the United States of America by means of a loan from the Inter-American Development Bank, and whereas by Section 18 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act 2010, it is provided that no loans shall be raised by the government unless entered into with the prior approval of the House of Assembly, signified by resolution thereof. Now therefore be it resolved that this House, 1, authorizes the Minister of Finance to raise by means of a loan the sum of $90 million in the currency of the United States of America, and 2, authorize the Minister of Finance to raise such loans by means of a loan contract with the Inter-American Development Bank on such terms pursuant to this resolution as are mutually agreed.
Order that the notice be brought up. Order that the notice do lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
There are no further notices.
Thank you, honorable member. Adjournment. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I renew all matters on the docket of the House. And I do move, Mr. Speaker, that the House adjourns until Monday, February 12th at 10 a.m. Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to Monday, February 12th at 10 a.m. Final adjournment? Okay. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will rise. Final adjournment?
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House do adjourn.
The House stands adjourned to Monday, Monday the 12th of February at 10 a.m.